Hello and welcome to StratCom Talks, our online events where we discuss current issues in strategic communications. We have been carrying these events for actually more than a year, and this event will be our final event in this season of StratCom Talks, and we wanted today to highlight our big event that is going to take place on 6th and 7th of May this year. It's going to be an online event, and we wanted to introduce you to the program and the organization of the event and some of the issues that will be tackled during Riga StratCom Dialogue. And today we have two wonderful guests. One is actually here live in our studio, which is Jānis, Sārts, our director of the StratCom Center of Excellence.
Hello.
And then we have Guna, Šnore, who has been our liaison and has been in charge of the program and is the mastermind behind the program that we have planned for you for May event. So Riga StratCom Dialogue was actually one of our first big events that we organized in 2015, and we've been trying to organize it every year, and we were hoping to host it in 2020 as well, but unfortunately the pandemic hit us, and we've decided that this year we are not going to organize it with an audience, but we are going to organize it live as an online event. But one important part is that it's going to be an event that's open to only people who have been registered. If you want to continue discussions and look at and listen to the panels that we're having, we highly encourage you to register on the event's webpage, which is www.rigastratcomdialogue.org. But before we go and talk about the program and issues that we are going to tackle in this year's conference, we wanted to show you the experience that we used to have in 2019 when we had Riga StratCom Dialogues hosted here in Riga in nice summer June Riga.
The biggest challenge for governments, in my opinion, today is actually maintaining a free and open space for communication of information, primarily because so much information comes at us with so quickly, and it's the ability to decide which is more important, which is false, which is true, which is critical, what is the agenda behind this. So it is a large challenge. It's not a small challenge.
What we don't have is a model for regulating online speech, and it's very easy to talk about freedom of speech. What online requires us to do is regulate freedom of reach. I can run a global disinformation campaign from my smartphone. That's a completely new challenge.
Understanding humans and human behavior will always be crucial to making sure we can use those technologies, understand those technologies, or maybe, defend ourselves against some of those technologies. That's going to be always important. It doesn't matter how the communications landscape will change, how the technologies will change.
So in this year's program, one of the most topical things that we are going to cover is disinformation and pandemic. And Jānis, probably journalists are asking you quite a lot of these questions, how countries are tackling this, what are the main problems that are concerned with disinformation?
Well, first of all, I'd probably react to the video we've seen and say, well, those good old days when people were no masks, were so many in the same room. And I, of course, have to apologize for everyone that This year we're not able to do that in person, but we're responsible and we understand that not everybody got their vaccination shot. So I hope next year we'll be able to bring back to more human interaction. But of course, therefore, we've really invested into the quality of the content in the conference. And as you just said, we kick off with what I think is the most topical thing, and that's infodemic. It's been global, it's been all-encompassing, and it has all the features of issues that modern information environment has. It has this issue of misinformation, where emotional groups of people have been reacting in a particular way and have been led into the echo chambers or information bubbles that might not correspond to scientific realities of the world around us. We have seen not very good strategic communications by the ones that have been responsible to disseminate the information, and I think, in fact, AstraZeneca's case is a very good case study for a very poor strategic communication in essence. And ultimately, we've had malign actors using this moment for their gain, for their interest, and also for undermining with the modern information space, given in one of the biggest crises our generation has seen.
Mm. So I would want to loop in Guna now. Can you tell a bit about your expectations and our expectations as a center for this panel on pandemics? Because, well, I guess that's a bit like a Pandora's box that you open, and there are so many issues that could be tackled and so many aspects. So what will be the focus of this panel?
Well, our main goal over the years for the conference has always been to broaden the horizon of the policymakers and the StratCom practitioners by providing them with the latest lessons, identify lessons learned, the most relevant analysis and research that they can use in their day-to-day work, but also in their future planning. And we know that from our community of interest of StratCom practitioners, many people have been involved in COVID and pandemics-related communication processes. And we hope that the three speakers that we have lined up for this topic, the representative of World Health Organization, European Director Dr. Kluge, the CEO of Center for Countering Digital Hate, as well as Professor Sander van der Linden from Cambridge, will all give different perspectives which do matter for StratCom practitioners. And there are many elements to be discussed. We hope that we'll hear from WHO representative about their take on infodemics and how they assess the, let's say, the work and the progress still ongoing on tackling infodemics related issues, because it has to do with trust in governments, in science, in health organizations, in WHO itself. And what should we take into consideration for the future, for future crises or future pandemics? For example, what can we learn and say about trust in science and science communication? Have we invested enough, and have we been sort of strategic about science communication? There are, I expect, interesting elements that the CEO of the Center for Countering Digital Hate will bring up, because they are undertaking very interesting research on anti-vax movements, on what are their strategies, what are their communication strategies, and what are their integrated communication plans, a concept that our community is familiar with. And also from the more academic perspective, Professor van der Linden is focusing quite a lot on the theory of psychological inoculation. So how to give the vaccine for resistance against disinformation. How does the theory look like? How does the actual practice look like? I hope that our participants will challenge our speakers on all of these issues and topics.
Thank you, Guna. And the panel on pandemics will be followed by a panel and conversations that will be focusing on the big picture. So we have seen so many changes that have been happening in the transatlantic community. We've seen online manipulation. We've been seeing online hate, and we've been watching how governments are trying to tackle these issues and talking about different ways how to regulate social media. And there have been quite a few conversations about the relationship between NATO and United States and the future of this transatlantic relationship. So, Jānis, how do you think, what are the biggest challenges that the NATO countries and NATO itself is facing today?
I think there are multiple challenges. There are challenges that come from Russia, from China, and there are challenges that come from within the societies, and all of that happens at the same time with increasing speed and making it even ever more difficult to respond. If I would start looking at, this one of the ways we look at it, the future of democracy, I think what we've been seeing, especially aggravated by the pandemic, is the increased fragmentation of our own societies, open, free democratic societies, where the level of extremes, many extremes within one society, the extremes that cannot talk to each other without shouting, not to mention agree upon something, has been growing exponentially. And that is, I think, something that is one of the core issues that we as the democracies, we as a West, have to first answer before we really kind of give a very in-depth thought of a Russian or Chinese or any other challenge that we might have in the next decade or so that we have a solid foundation. And to me, that's really one of the core issues that we face, and I hope and I see we have a very good speakers on these issues, and certainly it's not something that you debate for once and you get it solved, but there is a need for a constant discussion and movement, both by policymakers, by non-governmental organizations, and by larger society, to really start fixing these problems we're getting. Because of course technology is not going to stop, it's just going to be ever faster and will keep throwing issues at us. And so it's, I think, is even with all Russian and Chinese challenges NATO and NATO nations are facing, I would name this as a number one.
So Guna, can you tell us a bit more how these panels and strategy talks and policy talks that we have planned will address at least some of the issues?
Yes, we will have a specific panel on the future of democracy, talking about future of our fundamental rights. And what does it mean to protect, for example, freedom of speech in current circumstances in the digital environment? And the question is, actually, isn't it already too late to discuss this? Because somehow it seems that we have woken up only at the moment when we start losing some of our democratic fundamental values. But regarding the high-level speakers, we're very happy to have Deputy Secretary General of NATO joining us. 14th of July is the date when the next NATO summit will take place, and we expect that the Deputy Secretary General will outline what are the expectations from the side of the allies on decisions to be taken, because this will be the first NATO summit with the new US administration in place, and we've all seen some signals that there is, let's say, a quite different approach to the transatlantic cooperation and the agenda that both sides of the Atlantic could be dealing with together. We will also have Vice President of European Commission for Values and Transparency, Ms. Vera Jourova. European action plan for future of European democracy is quite an interesting achievement on the side of EU, if I may say so. And the question is, what's next? What is the implementation phase, and how will it look like? What can EU do in Brussels and also, in capitals, in order not to allow this action plan to remain only, a piece of paper? We will also have Prime Minister of Estonia, Ms. Kaja Kallas, joining us, as well as the President of Latvia, Mr. Levits, and Deputy Supreme Allied Command for Transformation, General Ruggiero. So this line of high-level speakers will eventually ensure us that our future is in good hands, and that our government institutions and international organizations, they have their eyes wide open, and they know what can be expected and how to manage it.
I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, and speakers are tremendous. But to me, it really is important that I hope that we will be able to address the next steps that have to be done, and kind of for many of the military listeners to our StratCom Talks, as well as to our regular conference, there would be a question, so what's for the military? And that's where I hope this Deputy Supreme Supreme Secretary would highlight this moving concept of NATO within this cognitive battlefield and how to adjust to that. Because I think what we've been seeing in last decade or less than a decade is that the concept of conflict has been ever enlarging. Cyber, information, cognitive. And the point is for the organizations for NATO to adapt. But to adapt, you have to do that in sync with all other actors that every government has, other governments have. So I think there's a kind of plethora of angles that people would shed light on these issues. But to me also is important that we have a way to distill something. So what from a national security perspective? So what from a military preparedness perspective? So what from the capability perspective for the military? So I think that's also something that I would be looking forward to really see.
And it seems like a very good time when to have a conversation about the future of NATO with the new US administration, and the United States has joined the center recently.
Well, I remember quite years ago I had to address the issue of future of NATO and point to the article, I think in the Financial Times back in the 60s, saying that NATO is doomed. So ever since its inception, NATO has been labeled like, near failure or doom, but has been persistent in delivering. And so I think I would lay aside that argument. There is a future for NATO because I think that is no better way for democracies in Europe and US and Canada. But I think what is important is to strive for adaptation, to strive to keep a pace with all of these new things that the life, the reality, the technology is bringing to us, and be quick and adapting, and not only for few allies, but have it as a universal concept for all of the allies. And I think that's where I think we can do better, but I'm absolutely no doubt on the future of NATO.
Well, speaking of the future, one of the core themes for any of our dialogues has been technology, and the future of technology, and what future challenges we will see. Also, as a center, we have had quite a big focus on that with our experiments, with reports that have focused on the regulations of social media and looking at different countries as an example how they are tackling these issues. We've also had some of the some of these StratCom talks devoted to social media regulation from different aspects. And of course, this year, this theme is present as well. So we will be looking at the use of technology that is smart and wise. We will be looking at how different countries are tackling these issues. Guna, can you tell a bit more about the speakers that have been planned for that topic?
Yes, Linda, you're absolutely right. It seems that everyone is talking about it nowadays, and you hear discussions and reporting in international organizations. I mean, if you look at the agenda of the European Parliament, I have never seen such a focus on technologies of the future as it has been over, I'd say, last 6 months or so. If you look at, for example, the analysis, but also the areas of research of prominent research institutions, organizations, they all now have, dedicated researchers for artificial intelligence and the future of technology. So this is something that everybody is talking about and everybody wants to sort of understand. However, we can see that some of the institutions approach it as a future problem. Well, there are only few of them who see it as a today's problem, today's issue, that actually artificial intelligence is with us today and now. And we ourselves are on daily basis with our online behavior training one or algorithm or the other.
Addressing this idea that we might need to have a closer relationship between US and EU in particularly in these areas. But by and large, I think we would have to go through both the present, but also once be able to prepare for the future. Because from my perspective, what we've been consistently doing, we've been reacting. And I think with incoming technologies, it will be even more important not to be reacting in the way we shape that environment, but also actually to anticipate and regulate for the risks as much as we can. Of course, it's not fully possible, but at least have some agreements and debate. So, okay, AI, big data, privacy, Internet of Things, where does that all fit within the context of the democratic values? And how do we find the balance in between all of those technologies and tremendous possibilities that they will bring, but also great risks that might be to the same value? So I think that's pertinent every time we speak, to return to that subject, because I think, as I've said, both possibilities are tremendous, but risks are as great.
And it somehow seems that in 2015 and 17, when we were talking about the future of technology, it was really, we were looking at the future as something very distant, but now it seems that the decisions that will be made now in the present will truly form the future we will be facing, and not in like 20 years, but like in 2, 5 or 6 years.
Yes, and that's the other subject, as in a military, to develop a, good weapon system, new weapon system, it takes 20, 25 years to do so. So it's always been about long-term planning, predicting what will be the strategic landscape, and et cetera, et cetera. And right now, when you go at least information space, the best you can do is 5 years. It's really extremely hard to go and look beyond with some sort of certainty. And I hope we recognize the fact that the decisions of today impact the way we will live in 5 to 7 years. Because previously it's been clear that we've not been able to recognize that moment when we decide and the implications. So with a focus on this. I think I hope there's more of it, but the changes, like with the AI, the importance of AI, privacy has been up and down, and correlation between individual rights, and then if you enforce those, then it actually limits the competitiveness of your industries and etc. It's complex debate, but I think it's pertinent for the strategic communication because the importance technologies play on the way information is processed by humans.
And well, it seems that we had a small technical glitch, but we are back for already quite some time, and Guna is also back. And Guna, you started talking about the panels that we are going to have on technology, very relevant after the technical glitch, but we would want to hear more about that.
Yes, as I said, the technology is not only a problem of the future, it's a problem of today. But apart from the panel, which will be dedicated to the future of technology, we'll also have a panel on regulation of the digital environment. And for those of you who've been with us for previous conferences, you will remember that we have discussed this topic, this issue already before. But if we compare with the discussion and the practical, let's say, steps by institutions, government institutions or international organizations, is now we can conclude that there has been quite some developments and quite some, let's say, evolution also in the thinking, because in 2019, when we discussed it in Riga in the National Library, we're focusing mostly on how to ensure that social media platforms are respecting freedom of speech while not encouraging radicalization, and how should they be held accountable for political advertising, how should they be held accountable for anything that can be related to foreign interference or influence. So this year, I hope that the discussion will be much broader. We will have a representative from Australia, the Australian media regulator, who will be talking about their news media bargaining code, quite a bold step by Australian authorities, which has also been discussed and criticized by some, suggesting that it only works in the interests of big Australian media. But I hope we will hear about their own sort of, let's say, way to this decision-making step and their first conclusions and lessons learned and identified. Can it be something that we could also look at in Europe or the Euro-Atlantic area? We will have a representative from the European Parliament, and as I already mentioned, I'm not sure if the audience heard it or not, European Parliament right now seems to be really focused on discussions related to the security of digital environment and the best possible governance approaches to be taken in the future. We will also have a representative from the social media companies, from Facebook, not to go into a direction where we all friendly agree that social media companies are bad and all the rest of us we're the good ones or the poor ones who are basically manipulated by social media companies. So I hope that we will go further than simple demonization of social media companies or future technology and really come down to some valuable conclusions to practitioners and policymakers.
Well, I think it's actually quite an interesting possibility to have the Australian regulator on the same stage as Facebook representative. I think for those in the audience that might present great opportunities to create some interesting, exciting exchanges. But more seriously, obviously, I think we see this how countries are looking at the ways how to regulate that framework and kind of trial and error. It's I think the method that we have right now, and so that's so important that in a democratic world we kind of look at both positive as well as a negative side effects of these kind of regulatory steps and try to come to the best solution possible, which kind of delivers on the democracy, equality front, but at the same time doesn't kind of stamp out the ability to innovate and create new great products. So I think that's kind of a interesting angle, and for me, I'm looking forward for that exchange.
Yes, I also agree with you that listening to this panel discussion and maybe using an opportunity to ask a few questions is something that many in our strategic communications community are waiting for. But speaking about hot topics, there is one new addition, recent addition that we have in the program, and the hot topic is foreign interference, and we have called the panel Foreign Interference in the Heart of Europe. Can you tell a bit more, Jānis, about that?
Yes, we have kind agreement from the Czech Deputy Defense Minister to participate in our conference and to talk us through on the recent experience that Czech Republic has had with the Russian agents and the investigations from the 2014 and most recent examples, and how that has unfolded in a both internal StratCom format as well as how it has worked into the kind of on the international scene. And I think that's one of those case studies what is always useful to bring to the people. I remember back, which year was it? I think 2018 we had this case study on Salisbury. Well, the same people involved, and now I think that would be also a good element for practitioners in particular to hear the lessons learned and kind of takeaways from that situation. In fact, as it still evolves in front of our eyes, so I think that would be an added value to register to the conference and to listen in and to see what Deputy Minister Harvanek has to say.
Yes. Guna, we have gone really quickly through most of the program that we have. Is there anything you would want to add we have missed?
Yes, I want to encourage everyone to register. That's number one. And number two, to prepare really challenging questions. And we hope that our audience will have lots of questions. And this will give us also some, food for thought how to organize our future events, our future conferences. So many thanks to those who have already registered, and we're looking forward to welcoming and seeing you all next week.
Recognize everybody's been bored to death with these online things, but please bear with us. It's, I hope, lost kilometers or meters or miles on this journey of digitalization because of the pandemic, and therefore, as I've said, we've tried to bring together the content that would be worthy to stay in front of, once again, in front of that PC or TV, wherever you would watch that conference. But certainly what I think is important, it's to keep that discussion alive, to keep that exchange alive. Pandemics are not, the other problems are not going away. So I think it is very important. Please register, please participate, hopefully enjoy, and of course, we all hope, with fingers crossed, next time around this 2022, we'll be having a very different conversation, talking about the delights of Riga and all the good bars that you can visit when you come to our conference.
Yes, that's a great hope. Well, actually, conference experience was something that we were always focusing on, and this time when we were planning the event, knowing that there is this Zoom fatigue and people are a bit tired, I must say that we have planned not only panel discussions but strategy talks and policy talks that's going to be a bit shorter, and most of the program is created by listening into what themes are current for people from within the strategic communications community. Before we cut to another video and the end of this conversation, a small reminder that the registration ends on 3rd of May. Please don't miss that deadline. Only those who have been registered will be able to ask those very challenging questions they probably have already in mind for some of the speakers we mentioned. And I will use an opportunity to also say, as this is our last StratCom Talks, at least during this season, to say a big thank you to Martin and No Limits, who have been technically supporting us and psychologically supporting us, and to all the moderators and speakers who have been participating, and to all the viewers who have been watching and asking their challenging questions and sending in their comments. We really appreciate that. But overall, and see you. Yes.
Thank you, Linda, as well, for being so persistent of bringing all of those talks together, and of course being host on so many of these talks. Thank you.
Thank you, Jānis. So see you on 6th of May online again, and a few videos now.
It's easy to follow the newest shiny thing, but in reality it might be just a fad that's, gone in a month or two. How do you understand and how do you pick what is actually relevant and actually important and will have a lasting influence or impact looking into the future of communications?
How quickly can we get the large tech platforms to behave like responsible corporate citizens?
I think one big dilemma we have is about being anonymous or pseudonymous online. It's great fun, it's very important in authoritarian countries, but this same cloak of invisibility is used by people who are either irresponsible or outright malevolent and attacking our democracies. This challenge for free countries is staying free in the face of surveillance capitalism, which is what we get from America, and techno-totalitarianism, which is what we're getting from China. And we are being squeezed from both directions, and it's affecting our privacy, our individuality, and ultimately our freedom.
What will social media look like in 10, 15 years? I think increasingly people are going to move to private networks, which I think will have a big impact on our ability to monitor what's going on, but also may become powerful channels of disinformation in their own right.
Big data is really very powerful. We should have international fellowship for protection the people from the abusement of the big data. So let the very powerful future tool really doing good for the human being, not against that.
I was urging the audience today to upskill and incorporate China knowledge into their existing knowledge in order to have a more complete understanding of and ability to assess the current strategic situation.
How can we ensure that our children and grandchildren have such a wonderful life as I enjoy? And I think the answer is that we have to stick together, that we have to work together, and that we have to overcome tensions. The biggest challenge for strategic communicators in military is to be recognized as an added value within the headquarters, because they do not shoot, they cannot fly aircrafts, they only have a brain, nothing else, and a good brain. And people sometimes say, well, they only talk. But if you don't talk, you cannot convince people that you are doing the right things.